My name is Michael Stock, and I'm in the studio now with Tom Bates. And Tom, welcome to WLRN.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Good to be here.
Good. Now, I'm not familiar with you, but you're from South Florida.
I am, yep. Born and raised in South Florida with a small stint in Los Angeles, California for about 5 years between 2015 and 2020.
2015 and 2020. So that's recent. You're out in LA for quite a while. And why'd you come back to South Florida?
COVID lockdowns happened, and I just started getting a lot of work down here. South Florida is a great place to be a musician in, whereas Los Angeles is a great place to be a musician from.
Why? Why is that?
Let me explain that distinction. So, down here in South Florida, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of venues all over the state that you can play at, get paid. You can make a pretty decent career out of being a musician that on a global scale that no one has heard of yet. You know, a lot of people do it down here. But in Los Angeles, those venues, it's like, you want to play at this small bar on Tuesday night? Sorry, Wilco's playing there. You know? So it's like it's very very difficult, and they don't have to pay for anything.
Were you then you were a musician out in LA?
Yep, musician, actor.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Did all of that, anything relating to art and entertainment.
And you came back home because your family, during COVID, it was easier for you to survive down here?
Yeah, easier to survive, and Los Angeles took a longer time to open up than South Florida, and there were different restrictions, so I fell back in love with South Florida. I don't think you really appreciate where you're from until you leave and you come back. I'm like, man, this is a tropical paradise. People pay thousands of dollars a year to come down here as tourists, and I get to live here.
Yeah. Well, people who are from LA, I think, say the same thing about their hometown. So.
Oh, absolutely.
So, did you tell me why you moved out to LA?
Music, things like that, and I just wanted to change of pace because that's the other side of the coin of, you know, living down here. It's like, oh man, my tropical paradise, beachside town, it's so boring. And you know, but it's good because Los Angeles is a whole different animal, and it's an interesting place because it's truly international, and all my friends were from somewhere else. I had maybe one friend of all my friends that was actually from LA. Nobody's from LA.
Are you still friendly with those folks?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Other musicians or actors and other.
Yeah, creatives. That's what they call them,
okay.
creatives. Yeah, and there are a lot of brilliant people there. I mean, there's so much talent. But I will say this too. South Florida has a ton of musical talent. I mean, you got great people on your shows. Just listen to the guy before me. I was listening to the next people warming up. Make sure you stick around for them too. There are a lot of really talented people down here, right?
Well, the question is, how do you get heard? You could be an artist, you could be very talented, but unless you have an agent or publicity or get gigs, nobody's going to find out about you.
Well, unless you're on the Michael Stock radio show.
Well, hardly. Tom Bates is here, and so how? You're getting out now. You moved down here to South Florida just a couple of years ago, and you're getting gigs.
Yeah, I'm consistently getting gigs. I have a great agent, so I have. I think to be able to work consistently in art, you need a few key things. You need an agent and you need a manager, and then if you're doing on a really, really big scale, I think a publicist is a great investment. I'm not at publicist stage yet because I don't really need it, but I have an agent. And I have people that help manage it too.
But did you looked up in the phone book agents and you hired an agent?
No, smoke signal. Smoke signnal, actually. I just lit a fire in my backyard and yeah.
Well, it's not easy to get an agent.
No, it's not. It's funny, Mike, because that's one of those things where it's like self-evident. Like if you do have an agent, you're legitimate enough because this person believes in you enough to stick their neck out for you. But you need that to get to the point where you get an agent in the first place.
So how did you get an agent?
That's a great question. So I remember I actually was in touch with them before I moved to LA. So I went to this one venue that was very desirable. Actually, the venue I'm playing on May 31st is called JB's on the Beach. And I just went in and I'm like, hey, you guys have live music. I want some of that. So they're like, oh yeah, also you should get in touch with our booking agent. She does all these venues down south. I'm like, really? So they have an agency and they book tons of entertainment all over South Florida, and they're great people. And it's funny, this guy was booking me. I mean, I was making thousands of dollars worth of sustainable living before I even met him face to face. He's just like, send me a couple videos. I'm like, okay. And then he's just like, yeah, you're booked out the next 3 months, and then he books the next 3 months, and we've just been doing it like that. So it's good.
You must be really good.
You know what? I'm just living my life. I love to do this. I think that's it. Like I'm a total music junkie, Mike. I played a gig yesterday, 3 hours nonstop, 9 p.m. till 12 a.m. Right? And I finish, and I go home, and I wake up, and I'm like, rise up, like, I want to play some music right now. It's like this insatiable appetite. And you're an artist. You know how it is. I mean, this is truly what I love to do. It's what I want to do, and I'm lucky enough to be able to do it.
Tom Bates is here in the studio, and we'll find out more about your passion. But let's have a song.
Okay, cool. So this is an interesting one. This is going to be a conversation starter. So it's called 45 Blocks. And actually, when I wrote this song, I was living in Manhattan. I was living in New York for a very, very brief period of time. Very cold. Fine city, very cold. So I ended up moving back. But when I was there, I met a person, and this song is about my interaction with that person. It's called 45 Blocks. Loving every Monday morning. I wish I curse upon you and I'll never be sorry. Hell no, you bend and you break, lead a life of give and take. I'm way down the road running like a madman, loving the chase. Not a minute to waste. Yeah, keep it tight, eyes wide open tonight. I got my hands tied, 45 blocks to the end of the line. You fall in my palm, won't take long to get what I need. And in times of misery, I can be a friend indeed. Oh, yes I can. Draped in a shadow, my bones are never rattle or shake. You catch me playing every angle, a menace to the angels and saints. And I hate to wait. Yeah, keep it tight, eyes wide open tonight. I got my hands tied, 45 blocks till the end of the line. Na 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 na. Yeah, keep it tight. I got my eyes wide open tonight. Hands tied, 45 blocks to the end of. Hands tied, 45 blocks to the end of. Hands tied, 45 blocks to the end of the line.
Tom Bates, live in the WLRN studio. Tom, that went over my head. What was that about?
Yeah, so that does take a little bit of explaining because it's an inside personal detailer. So I was living in Manhattan at the time, and it was Thanksgiving, and I didn't have anywhere to go because I'm from South Florida. I didn't really know anyone there. So I ended up going to this, they call it a Thanksgiving orphan party for everyone from out of town that didn't get to go home. And it was at people that were a social stratus way above where I was at the time. And so they had like this beautiful meal and everything, and all these random people were over. So we're all talking, and I get to talk to this beautiful young girl, and we're talking for like 2 hours about music, about life, about where she's from, and she's just such a pleasant young girl. And so she gets up and leaves, and the host of the party's like, "You don't know who you were talking to, do you?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "She's a very famous adult entertainer." I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, no judgment here. Lovely young lady, right?" And he goes, "Well, she really likes you." I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm probably never going to see her again, so for what it's worth, that's nice." So at the time, I was like broke, Mike. I mean, like it's taking the subway home from this guy's place was just like, I'm like, I could either eat tomorrow or I could ride the subway home. So I was going to walk. And it's a beautiful night in New York City. So I'm walking home 45 blocks from his apartment to mine. And about, like 30 blocks, I'm like, I really got to go to the bathroom. And so I just like pop into this random bar, right? I mean, Mike, I threw a dart at a board of bars in New York City, and there's over 1,000 on Manhattan alone. And I go into this bar, and guess who's sitting at the bar? It's that girl. It was that girl. We ended up hanging out the rest of the night. She's very, very nice, by the way. I don't know if I should say her name, stage name is Lexi Love. Very, very nice girl.
I don't know who she is.
Yeah.
That's well. So you were in New York to make it big. What were you doing in New York?
I had just finished college, and I wanted to go somewhere else. Just to broaden my horizon, see what's going on. That's a great city to do that, get really thrown in the mix, and I did get thrown into the mix.
A college with where and what degree?
Florida Atlantic University. I majored in political science and I minored in philosophy.
And you wanted to go to New York for the excitement.
That was more in the philosophy realm, right? I wanted to experience life. I have a pretty privileged upbringing in the sense that I can just jet off to New York for a year and just experience life. But it's not like I'm a trust fund kid with a black Amex card. I wanted to do it in such a way, like I had not enough money to survive to my name, and I liked that, right? Because the reality is like, worst case scenario, buy a plane ticket home, right? But I wanted to go out there and really experience life. And I'm still like that, and I think that's the only way to live.
What was it, a positive experience then? Living in New York?
I'd say in the long run, yeah. I got when I got there, I got a job at Guitar Center, and I'm like, oh, I love music, and being around music will be great. Worst decision ever. They got acquired by a capital management firm, and they were just like driving you into the ground, trying to get you to sell $10,000 worth of product to everybody who walked through the door, which is not realistic. But so they ended up firing me. You'll like this. So I got fired because it was Christmas Eve, and some kid was trying out a guitar and started playing Johnny Be Good, and I know all the lyrics, so I started singing the lyrics and like doing the Chuck Berry duck walk, and like there like a group of people formed around it, and then the manager was there, and he's like, oh, we like to have fun here, we like to have fun, don't we? And I'm like, well, I'm gone. So but it was good. No hate on Guitar Center, but
so
yeah.
Obviously you went there for music. You were hoping to get discovered, I guess, musically.
Yeah. I was in a band very briefly. They had a good name, I think. It was called Washington at War, which is, there's a sculpture in Washington Square Park. It's called, one's Washington at Peace, and the other one is Washington at War. I thought that was very, very clever. I didn't come up with that.
It's a terrible name.
You don't like it? Washington at War? We were a rock band, though. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So what happened between the rock band and the singer-songwriter we have now?
That's a great question. So I never intended to sing. I wanted to play guitar in a band, and that's it, right? But I came back to Florida after that, and I started jamming with a buddy of mine. And he ended up getting us a residency, not just a gig, a consistent weekly high-paying gig at a reputable venue called Runway 84 in Fort Lauderdale. Are you familiar?
At the airport, sure.
Yeah, exactly. They just did a renovation, by the way. It's amazing.
It was a great restaurant. I enjoyed that place.
Yeah, you should go back. They just put $4 million in. It's beautiful. So Anthony, the owner of it, he was telling my friend Max, he's like, hey, Max, we need somebody to play an event on Thursdays in perpetuity. And so he calls me up. He's like, hey, I got us a gig. I'm like, oh, wonderful. I think we're going to play some instrumental music and stuff like that. He's like, no, Anthony wants one of us to sing. I'm like, okay, well, that kind of narrows it down. I'm not doing it. He's like, I'm not doing it. You're doing it. So he's like, I got the gig. I'm like, all right.
Oh, jeez.
So I don't like to think of those formative years that much. It wasn't terrible. I mean, everyone really liked it, but you know how you progress and you look back on that. I'm like, I don't think my technique was very on back then.
Were you singing original music or covers?
A combination of both. I like to do original music as much as possible, or when I choose covers, I like to choose covers that are kind of a little bit esoteric, like songs that are known by artists that you wouldn't think someone would cover. For example, like if I'm going to cover Van Morrison, right? I won't do Brown Eyed Girl because everyone does that. I'll do like Wild Night. something like that, you know?
Oh, that's good. Well, in perpetuity, obviously you're not still doing that gig at Runway 84. What happened to that?
No, so I ended up moving to California, and my buddy and another one of his friends, they took my place, and then they did the renovation, and now they have like a full live jazz band there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It's just it's not suited for my particular style of music. I don't think it would really flow there.
Well, did you answer the question? You had a rock band, and now you're a singer-songwriter. Do you still
Yeah.
have a rock band?
I do. So you're gonna like this. So
Okay.
I try to insulate myself from any financial ruin at any opportunity.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So here's what that means within the confines of this conversation. So I operate as a solo artist, and then if a venue's like, well, we want something more upbeat, we want maybe one more guy. Okay, I have a duo. Okay, duo's good, but we want something rocking. We want drums. Okay, I have a trio. Okay, that's nice, but we want a full rock band. I have a quartet. All right, fine. This is a big festival. We want something else. I've got 5. I will go on and on and on.
Yeah, Tom, you're a guy who just doesn't say no to a gig.
Mike, that I hope that's right from your lips to God's ears.
Tom Bates is here in the studio. How about another song?
Cool, yeah. So this one is called "Way Out We Go." So this is going to be off the new record "Midnight Sun." So I recorded this at a fantastic studio in Pompano Beach called Power Station, and we're mixing this one right now. And this is the solo version of it, and it's got a more folky vibe. After all, this is the Folk Hour with Michael Stock.
Sure. Folk and acoustic music.
Folk and acoustic music.
Official
Acoustic
name.
guitar, and I'm a folk. Skyline's never gonna feel the same. One thing I know for sure, everyone and everything's changed. Although I don't wanna ever look back, I always wish for more than I had. Right or wrong, gotta keep it on anyway. Now I know just what I need, baby. Way out we go on our own. I've been gone too long, and it feels good to be home. I've been around the block, I'm gonna tell you one thing that I know. In the daytime, lifeline, always have a key. Blue sky, sunshine, only thing you need. And every day I live and die 1,000 times. Now I know just what I needed, baby. Way out we go on our own. Just what I needed, baby. Way out we go on our own. Way out we go on our own. Way out we go on our own.
Tom Bates, live in the WLRN studio. Tom will be this Friday at La Playa in Deerfield, and then Wednesday, June 31st, you said?
May 31st.
May 31st.
Yes.
JB's on the beach.
JB's on the beach, right by the pier. Beautiful venues.
Do you have like a website or someplace where we could find out more about you?
Yes, absolutely. So Instagram is probably the best way to do it. My Instagram is at Tom Bates Music, and I post all the updates on there and everything like that. And then for my band, it's the.photogenics.band. That's also on Instagram. And you can catch us live, solo, duo, full band shows. And I got an album out now with the Photogenics called Shades of Yesterday. It's on Apple Music, Spotify, all streaming platforms. And I'm coming out with an album. One more plug, Mike.
Well, yeah, I'm not finished with you. I want to hear another song.
Okay, and one more plug. I got Midnight Sun coming out in about a month, and that's going to be a solo record for me.
Well, we're just at the top of the hour, so I want to get some business, and then we'll have another song from you. Okay?
Perfect.
Tom Bates is here in the studio. My name is Michael Stock, here every Sunday on Folk and Acoustic Music on 91.3 WLRN and HD1 Miami Fort Lauderdale, 91.5 WKWM and HD1 Marathon Key West, 105.5 WOLL HD2 Hope Sound, 101.9 NPR of the Palm Beaches. Lowdown will be coming up, but we'll have more of Tom Bates right after these messages. Okay, here we go. This is Folk and Acoustic Music. My name is Michael Stock, in the studio with Tom Bates. And that last song you played, Way Out We Go, what was that about?
So that was about moving out of Phil Collins' house.
Phil Collins is... I remember reading that in your press release, that you were somehow connected to Phil Collins through your wife.
Yes.
He is like a superstar. He's like in a different stratosphere. Are you intimidated at all by that?
No, not intimidated. I have nothing but immense respect for the man from an artistic level, professional level, and I've met him quite a few times. I've even litigated with him, and he is a good guy. He really is. I was infinitely influenced him before I ever came upon my current situation with my wife, as we all are. He's ubiquitous.
So you knew him. You knew how? When did you meet Phil Collins?
I met him through my wife. So she didn't tell me that she was living with him, and I didn't know who she was. So she's like, "Oh, come over to my house. I own this beautiful mansion on the water in Biscayne Bay, and I love architecture." So I said, "Hey, sure, I'll come on over." So I walk out back, and it's the most beautiful home I've ever been to in my life. And I'm sitting out there. She says, "Hey, I'm going to go make us some espressos. Just hang here, right?" And it was supposed to be just I'm having a coffee and going home, right? Because we had just come home from the airport on a trip. And so she's taking like 10 minutes, 15 minutes for these espressos. And I'm like, I have an espresso machine. Those things take 3 minutes tops. So I walk inside, and as I'm walking in, a housekeeper starts running out, and she's got her hands up in there. She's like, "No, don't come in, don't come in." And I'm like, "What's going on?" And I turn and look, and Phil Collins is sitting on the couch. And he's just like, "Hello, who are you?" And I'm thinking, oh my God, right? Because that's, for a guy like that, you can't have strangers in your house. It's a security risk, right? And so I'm thinking, I got to get out of here, because I'm going to get discharged from his property, and rightfully so, by one of my heroes, And so she ended up coming outside, and so long story short, to cut to the chase of my conversation with Phil, so I'm out there, I'm sitting out there, I'm like, this guy's gonna kick me out of his house. This is so humiliating. I got to connect with this guy, and I got to leave here in grace, right? So he starts talking about history, because I know fanboying on his music is not going to get you anywhere, right? Talking about how great he is, you're just another fan, right? So he starts talking about history. I'm like, well, I love history. So he starts talking about the Alamo. And I start talking about the Alamo with him, and he's telling me about these shows that Genesis played in Europe at all these historical sites and everything. And then at the end of it, he gets up and he's like, "Thomas, forgive my interruption. It's a pleasure to meet you, and you're welcome here anytime." And I was like, wow, I dodged a major bullet. Speechless, huh, Mike? What can you say?
That's amazing.
Yeah, but he's always very gracious. I mean, he's a gentleman.
He's approachable as a human, but when you see him with playing music, I mean, he's a superstar. I wouldn't know how to talk to him.
He's in a league unto his own. I mean, he really is. And like, I obviously knew who he was, but I didn't know. I mean, and he's an icon, but how absolutely preeminent, like Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson, preeminent he really is. I mean, it is fascinating, that level of fame for like 50 years.
So you can't fanboy on him, but has he heard your music?
Maybe. So Eric Clapton has heard my music. He's a friend of Phil's. So I recorded 3 songs with Emilio Estefan, and those went really, really well. Emilio, another outstanding guy, Miami guy.
I have never met him. I mean, he's a Miami guy. It's amazing that you even had him produce your record.
Yeah, co-produce. So I went in there with some demos, some songs to show him, and we were going to do 3 songs, and he didn't know me, but he knew my wife because his daughter went to school with Nick Collins, who's Phil's son, who was an outstanding drummer. So he was like, okay, I'll produce these songs. He's sitting down with me, he's talking, he's like, do you want to go 50-50 on this? Because you kind of know what you're doing. I'm like, yeah, I'm a pretty good producer. He goes, let's collaborate. Let's do this together. So we ended up writing 2 songs together and co-producing. It was great. I was like, wow, this is, because he didn't have to do that, right? Yeah. And it was very, very, it was flattering, and it's very encouraging. It's like, okay, it's things like that. They tell you you're on the right path.
Well, so you would think that if Emilio Estefan put his stamp on it, it would be a hit. What happened to the songs?
They are currently tied up in litigation. Yeah, we both want them because they're good songs. They're good songs, but the reality is, I'll tell you this. You want to hear just this is entertainment. Let's take the cloak off. Look behind the curtain here. The main song, the single that I recorded with Emilio, I wrote during COVID in my parents' garage. I wrote it in my parents' garage. And that's the beautiful thing about art. I didn't write it in some posh studio or anything like that. I wrote it next to exercise equipment in my parents' garage on an $80 guitar. And he ended up producing it with some of the best musicians in the Western Hemisphere.
Tom Bates is here in the studio. That's the difference between folk music and pop music, is that there's not a lot of litigation in folk music.
No, well, ask Bob Dylan.
Well,
yeah, but yes, by and large, you're absolutely correct about that.
Are you more of a pop or a folk musician?
Honestly, my roots are in folk because pop is too pristine and rigid. I like the creative flow because I do write song melodies first, right? So I'll sit down every night, every night of the week. I'll sit down with my guitar after dinner for about 3 hours if I'm not playing a gig. And I'll just start strumming chords, right? And I'll just think, okay, yeah, I like that. Now let's wrap some lyrics around it. And the reason my record is called Midnight Suns, this is my process. I'll start writing, and then I'll go out to a kava bar, not a bar, but they serve tea and stuff, coffee shop type deal. And around midnight, and then I'll start writing lyrics, and then refining. And I'll tell you, Mike, by the time a song's done, I hate it so much. I hate it. I'm like, leave me alone. But that's how you got to do it, because it's refining. It's like, you know what it's like? Songs are like sandwiches. They always taste better when someone else makes them.
I'm going to have one more question for you and then have you play a song.
Go for it.
Because reading your press release at your website, you had a passion for baseball.
Yes.
And then it seemed like all of a sudden that switched off and you had a passion for music. What caused that switch?
It's a great question. So I was playing Division I college baseball at the University of South Florida. I got a scholarship out of high school. By all accounts, I was very good. And when I got to that Division I level, that's the moment in your life when you fish or cut bait, because you go to college to prepare in life for your career, for the rest of your life, right? And if you are at the top level of Division I college baseball, you're probably going to go on to play professional ball. You're going to make a lot of money. But I saw early on, I'm like, it's not the physicality, it's the mentality. I don't like this game as much anymore. Because here's the thing about baseball, it's different than music. You can do everything right in baseball, and if you got some guy that's throwing 100 miles an hour on the mound, he's just going to eat you alive. Like there's no way, it's just so talent based. Whereas music is good for me because I'm a workhorse, right? And I love this and I do it all the time. And that adds up, right? Your body of work builds. There's no body of work in sports. It's how are you doing right now in this at bat, right? And after that, I remember I was falling out of love with it. But it's not like I was just like, oh, let me stop this and learn how to play guitar. No, when I was a kid, I would always listen to records. My dad bought me Led Zeppelin 4, right? And there's a lot of, they're rooted in folk, Led Zeppelin. They love folk music. And I would have like, I would rewind every little phrase and pick things apart and like kind of like reverse engineer the production without knowing what I was doing. And I use those skills to this day. Like that was something that was truly inherent in me from a young age. So yeah, and after that, I stopped playing ball, and I said, okay, I need something to fill up this time because, Mike, a lot of guys I know that stopped playing, they got into bad stuff, right? Substance abuse, criminal activity, things like that. And I'm like, I'm not doing that, and I don't think I'm going to go to law school. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening in Canada. And so I started playing music, and my dad is a musician and a great musician. And so I got into that. And then one thing led to another. And what got it to stick was that I started to get paid for it. And that's kind of like the kiss of death. But people always say like, oh, if you want to do what you love and keep it pure, like don't get paid for it. I say, I don't know if I can say this. Hell no, hell no. No, make it your livelihood, because you know what, Mike? I don't get nervous anymore because when I go up on stage, that's what's paying my bills. That's my life. I'm not nervous. This is like a work for me. It's vocational, but I'm not like, oh, I have to be great. It's like you're able to leave well enough alone and progress, I think, a lot faster. It's more sustainable, if that makes sense.
Do you go to, you have an agent now.
Yes.
Did you have to audition for that? Do you get nervous when you go before suits in the business?
Sometimes, but I realized that the key to everything is control what's in between your ears, right? Everything is your mentality. And I realized that being nervous is not going to do you any good. It's not. And that's easier said than done, right? And that's where experience comes in. But I think of one thing. Play loose. Let the chips fall where they may, man. The universe and its infinite wisdom is going to put you always exactly where you need to be. And you got to be stoic, and you got to let it go, man. And if it's selling out Wembley Stadium, great. If it's playing La Playa on Fort Lauderdale Beach this Friday at 6 p.m., that's cool too. But it's all about, life is about the journey. And that's like a kind of a tacky thing to say, but to really internalize it within the context of art, I think is key towards growth, because I want to do this forever. Right?
Are you happy here in South Florida? Is LA or New York in your future?
It depends on a lot of things, but I love South Florida. My family's here. I have great friends here. The music scene is quite lucrative, and I'm ensconced in the South Florida music scene. And the good thing about art is kind of my plan is to be based out of South Florida, and then as you know, you tour. Mm-hmm. So you go to Europe. I think having South Florida as your home is not a bad thing. So you go from city to city, and I think I do want to live in South Florida because I love it here.
Great. Tom Bates is here. Let's have one more song.
Alrighty. So this is it's actually the first song I ever wrote. It's called Long Lost Requiem. This is a very folk thing.
How old were you when you wrote?
Oh man,
Long Lost Requiem.
Long Lost Requiem. So the reason I'm playing is because we're re-recording it. This was a long time ago before I really knew what I was doing. But I think the song still stands.
Requiem is like a college word. How old were you when you wrote this?
I was in college. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I was in college. I didn't start writing songs. Everyone tells you you'll never write a good song. You'll never do it, kid. So I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna write a bad song. Keep writing bad songs till they turn good. Right, but I like this one. The most flattering thing was my best friend growing up, at his wedding, they played the song. And I was like, okay, that's pretty great. And he's a harsh critic, man. Oh, God. All right, Long Lost Requiem.
It's Tom Bates.
be on the road again, heading to wherever you are. And fame is just a game I couldn't care less if I score. Living out of West LA, still you look me in the eye. And God keeps giving, I'm slipping, no, I can't deny. Oh, but I'll try. Running through my mind again, never waking from the dream you live within. We were so close. Tell me, will I lose, will I win? Save me from a long lost requiem. She knows something, ooh, something I don't. I was tearing through the 7 lanes and put the pedal into the floor. I'm sick and so tired, but I'll never stop searching for why you had to leave me here, California calling to you. And you never look back on the road with nothing to lose. Now you've got nothing to lose. You're running through my mind again, and never waking from the dream you live within. We were so close. Tell me, will I lose, will I win? Save me from a long lost requiem. She knows something, ooh, something I don't. Ooh, something I don't. Something I don't.
Tom Bates, live in the WLRN studio. Tom, will you be Friday?